Alien students found out that Earth's smallest spider can kill their strongest warrior in one bite. The Intergalactic Academy of Science and Cultural Exchange, or IASES for SON. Short, though most students called it ICE because apparently every educational institution in the universe required an awkward acronym floated majestically in the neutral space between 17 allied systems. The massive space station rotated slowly, its gleaming spires catching the light of nearby stars, creating an almost mystical glow that was featured in every promotional hologram. Velix T. Nara, a blue-skinned Neptinian with 3 eyes and a perpetually worried expression, navigated the crowded main corridor of the xenobiology department. His central eye scanned his schedule, while his peripheral eyes watched for obstacles, mainly other students rushing to class. The corridor housed representatives from over 200 different species, each more bizarre than the last. "Hey, 3 Eyes. Still trying to beat my research score?" The booming voice belonged to Drox, a hulking Kryx'Narian with orange scales and arms thick enough to crush steel beams without breaking a sweat. The Kryx'Narians were famous for 2 things: their unparalleled physical strength and their insufferable arrogance about said strength. Velix's membrane lids fluttered nervously over all 3 eyes. "I'm not trying to beat anyone, Drox. I just want to complete my thesis on comparative biology." Sure. Drox's laugh sounded like rocks in a blender. "Everyone knows you've been climbing the academic rankings. Just remember who's been number 1 in xenobiology for 3 cycles." Before Velix could respond with something suitably non-confrontational, a strange creature bumped into him, a human named Miguel. Humans were relatively rare at the Academy, mainly because their home planet was classified as a Class 5 death world, a designation so extreme that most galactic citizens couldn't comprehend how anything sentient had evolved there. "Sorry about that, Velix. Wasn't watching where I was going." Miguel adjusted his backpack, seemingly unbothered by the fact that he'd just touched a being whose skin secreted mild toxins. Most species wore protective gear around Neptinians, but humans? They just wiped their hands on their pants and moved on. "It's fine," Velix said, instinctively backing away. Not out of fear for himself, humans were surprisingly fragile despite their death world origins, but out of concern for Miguel. "Shouldn't you be wearing gloves?" "My epidermis." "Oh, that little tingle?" Miguel waved dismissively. "Feels kind of nice, actually. Like those fizzy drinks they serve at the cafeteria." Drox snorted. "Typical human. Your whole species has some kind of death wish," says the guy whose planet has an average temperature of -200 degrees. Miguel shrugged. "Different strokes for different folks, I guess." That was the thing about humans that fascinated Velix, their casual attitude toward danger. Earth, or Terra, as it was officially designated in galactic records, had everything that could kill you: extreme temperature variations, high gravity, deadly radiation from their sun, unpredictable weather patterns, tectonic instability, and an absolutely ridiculous variety of venomous creatures. Yet humans discussed these horrors with the same nonchalance that Velix would describe a mild rainfall. "We were just discussing academic rankings," Velix explained to Miguel, eager to change the subject. "Oh yeah? Drox still bragging about being top of the class?" Miguel grinned. Drox flexed one of his forearms. "It's not bragging if it's fact. My species simply has superior cognitive abilities, matched only by our physical prowess." "Speaking of which," Miguel chimed in, "did you guys submit your assignments for Professor Zlerk's Comparative Planetary Ecosystems class?" "I did mine on Australia." "Australia?" Velix searched his memory. "Is that one of your planet's oceanic trenches?" Miguel burst out laughing. "No, it's a continent, home to some of the most unique wildlife on Earth." "Ah yes," Drox nodded knowingly, though Velix suspected he knew nothing of the sort. "Your planet's famous for its wildlife. All teeth and claws, I assume?" "Sometimes," Miguel replied with a curious smile. "But the deadliest things aren't always the biggest. Take spiders, for example." "What's a spider?" Velix asked. "Small arachnid creatures. 8 legs, multiple eyes, some of them extremely venomous." Australia has some of the deadliest ones in the galaxy. Drox made a dismissive gesture with his lower right arm. Please. Your Earth creatures might be impressive by your standards, but they wouldn't last 5 minutes against a mature Kryx'Narian warrior. Miguel raised an eyebrow. You think so? Interesting theory. And that's when Velix knew they were in trouble. Because in his 3 years at the Academy, he'd learned that whenever a human said interesting theory in that particular tone, chaos inevitably followed. The trio had moved their conversation to the Academy's biodome, a sprawling greenhouse that simulated various planetary environments. They currently sat in the Earth section, surrounded by what Miguel called palm trees and ferns. Velix found the humidity uncomfortable, but it was worth enduring to continue their debate. Let me get this straight, Drox said, leaning against a tree with such force that it bent slightly. You're saying some tiny creature from your planet could take down a Kryx'Narian warrior? That's delusional even for a human. Miguel sipped from a container of Earth coffee, a substance that contained enough stimulants to paralyze a small Neptinian. I'm not saying it would win in a fair fight. I'm saying its venom could kill you before you even realized what was happening. Impossible, Drox scoffed, all 4 arms crossed over his massive chest. Our physiology is designed to withstand extreme conditions. Our blood contains natural antivenins for thousands of compounds. Velix, always the researcher, pulled up a holographic display from his wrist device. Actually, according to xenobiological records, Kryx'Narian antivenin capabilities have never been tested against Earth-based toxins. There's simply no data. See? Miguel pointed at the hologram. Scientific gap right there. Drox's orange scales flushed a deeper shade, a sign of irritation in his species. Are you suggesting we conduct an experiment? No, absolutely not, Velix interjected quickly. As fascinating as the discussion was, he had no desire to witness an actual confrontation between Earth fauna and his classmate. Why not? Miguel looked genuinely curious. It would make for groundbreaking research. Comparative analysis of Earth venom effects on non-terrestrial physiologies. You could win the Galactic Science Prize. Velix's 3 eyes blinked asynchronously, a sign of deep contemplation among his people. The Galactic Science Prize would certainly secure his academic future, and potentially earn him a prestigious position at any research institution in the 17 systems. I have a better idea, Drox said, standing to his full height of nearly 8 feet. My cousin Thraxx is visiting next week. He's a decorated warrior in the Kryx'Narian elite guard. If your Earth creature is so deadly, let him face it. Guys, this is getting out of hand, Velix protested, but his objection went largely ignored. Miguel scratched his chin thoughtfully. What are the parameters? We can't exactly have them fight in an arena. Simple, Drox replied. The creature attempts to injure Thraxx. If he suffers no ill effects, I win. If he shows any significant reaction, you win. And what are we wagering? Miguel asked. Academic prestige. The winner gets full credit for the experiment in their thesis. Velix found his voice again. This is highly unethical, and against at least 17 Academy regulations regarding the treatment of visiting dignitaries and the handling of potentially dangerous Earth fauna. Oh, come on, Miguel said, clapping Velix on his slender shoulder, apparently forgetting again about the toxins. We're not going to hurt anyone. Think of it as a controlled scientific demonstration. And if Drox is right, nothing will happen anyway. I'm more than right, Drox boasted. Thraxx can withstand temperatures that would melt your bones and pressure that would crush your puny human skull. What could a tiny Earth creature possibly do to him? Miguel's expression turned serious. You really want to find out? Fine. I propose using a Sydney funnel web spider. Small, unassuming, and according to our biology database, capable of killing a human in 15 minutes without treatment. Drox extended his upper right arm. Challenge accepted. Thraxx arrives in 5 days. You have until then to acquire your deadly creature. As Miguel and Drox sealed their agreement with a handshake, Velix couldn't shake the feeling that they had just initiated something that would end with a formal academic inquiry, or worse. an interplanetary incident. The Academy's central library was a vast repository of knowledge spanning thousands of worlds, yet finding detailed information about Earth spiders proved surprisingly difficult. Velix, Miguel, and somewhat reluctantly Drox had gathered at a holographic research terminal surrounded by floating data screens. "This is absurd," Drox complained, swiping through images of Earth wildlife. "Your planet has over 40,000 species of spiders? How do humans survive?" Miguel zoomed in on a particularly hairy specimen. "Most are harmless. We just avoid the dangerous ones." "And how exactly do you identify the dangerous ones?" Velix asked, genuinely curious. "Well, in Australia we generally assume they all are," Miguel replied with a straight face. Velix couldn't tell if he was joking. Humans often said things with such conviction that it was impossible to determine when they were being serious. He made a note in his personal database. Humans possibly possess some form of natural venom detection ability? "Here it is," Miguel announced triumphantly, expanding an image of a small, dark spider. Thraxx robustus, the Sydney funnel web spider, extremely aggressive, equipped with large fangs that can penetrate human fingernails, and venom potent enough to kill a human in hours without antivenom. Drox leaned closer, clearly unimpressed. "That tiny thing? It's barely the size of my smallest finger segment." "That's what makes them so dangerous," Miguel explained. "Their size belies their lethality. Their venom is specifically attuned to affect mammals' nervous systems." "Good thing Kryx'Narians aren't mammals," Drox said smugly. Velix scrolled through the chemical composition of the spider's venom. "Fascinating. The primary toxin affects ion channels in nerve cells, causing massive release of neurotransmitters. It's quite elegant from a biochemical perspective." "But will it affect a Kryx'Narian?" Drox challenged. Velix performed a quick comparative analysis. "Interestingly, while your nervous system is structured differently, you do possess similar ion channels in your neural pathways. The effect might not be identical to its impact on humans, but theoretically." "Theoretically isn't good enough," Drox interrupted. "Thraxx won't be impressed by theories." Miguel pulled up another screen, this one showing a map of Earth. "The spiders are native to a small region in Australia. Acquiring one might be problematic." "Not necessarily," Velix said, switching to the Academy's inventory database. "The biology department maintains specimens from various worlds for study purposes. Earth fauna is particularly well represented due to its diversity." "Are you suggesting we steal a deadly spider from the biology department?" Drox asked, sounding more intrigued than concerned. "Not steal," Velix corrected. "Borrow. For scientific purposes." Miguel grinned. "I like how you think, Velix. But we'll need access to the secure specimens area." "Leave that to me," Drox said confidently. "Professor Krell owes me a favor after I helped move those gravity-resistant growth chambers last semester." As they continued plotting, Velix found himself increasingly caught up in the excitement of their illicit research project. The ethical considerations still bothered him, but the scientific curiosity was overwhelming. What would happen when Earth's toxic biology encountered alien physiology? The question was too tantalizing to ignore. "One problem," Miguel said suddenly. "Even if we get the spider, how do we ensure it bites Thraxx? These aren't trained animals." "The literature says they're aggressive and will bite when threatened," Velix noted. "Perfect," Drox declared. "Thraxx loves displaying his courage. If we present it as a test of bravery rather than a scientific experiment, he'll practically volunteer to provoke it." Velix wasn't sure if this plan made him feel better or worse about their ethical breach. Either way, they were committed now. Tomorrow they would attempt to borrow one of the deadliest creatures from humanity's death world. Professor Zix, a tall, spindly being from a gas giant moon with 6 arms and a perpetually distracted demeanor, maintained the Academy's collection of Earth specimens. The professor's obsession with Earth biology was legendary. Students joked that he had more knowledge about Earth creatures than the humans themselves. Velix, Miguel, and Drox approached the specimen storage room with what they hoped appeared to be casual interest rather than criminal intent. Remember, Miguel whispered. Act natural. We're just eager students working on a xenobiology project. I am an eager student working on a xenobiology project, Velix pointed out. Just not one approved by the ethics committee. Drox snorted. Ethics are for species without the strength to take what they need. Miguel rolled his eyes. And that attitude is exactly why your people haven't been invited to join the Galactic Council yet. Before Drox could respond with what would undoubtedly be a diplomatic incident in verbal form, the door to the specimen room hissed open. Professor Zix emerged, arms full of data tablets. Ah, students. Wonderful. The professor's voice fluctuated wildly in pitch, another characteristic of his species. Here for the specimen presentation? Early, yes, but enthusiasm is commendable. The three exchanged confused glances before Velix ventured, specimen presentation? Indeed, indeed. Schedule for next cycle, but preparations beginning now. New Earth specimens arrived yesterday. Fascinating diversity. Miguel stepped forward. Actually, Professor, we're working on a comparative toxicology project. We were hoping to examine some of Earth's venomous species. All 6 of Professor Zix's eyes lit up with excitement. Toxicology. Excellent field of study. Earth, perfect case study, evolutionary pressure creating remarkable chemical weapons. The professor ushered them inside the specimen room, a massive chamber lined with environmental containment units. Each unit simulated the native conditions of its inhabitant, from scorching deserts to frozen tundras. Earth section here. Zix gestured to a large area filled with terrariums of various sizes, organized by taxonomic classification and geographical origin. Velix was immediately overwhelmed by the diversity on display. Creatures with scales, fur, multiple legs, or none at all stared back at him from their artificial habitats. We're particularly interested in Australian arachnids, Miguel said, steering the conversation toward their target. Australia. Yes, yes, Professor Zix practically vibrated with enthusiasm. Evolutionary isolated continent. Unique selection pressures. Created magnificent toxins. The professor led them to a section labeled Arachnida, Oceania. Inside were dozens of containers housing different species of spiders. Sydney funnel web here, Zix pointed to a container housing a dark, glossy spider about the size of a Neptinian thumb. Ach robustus. Magnificent neurotoxin producer. Would kill human in hours without antivenom. Drox peered skeptically at the small creature. This is the deadly predator you were so worried about? Miguel nodded solemnly. Don't let size fool you. Professor Zix suddenly darted to another section. Must show you recent acquisition. Brazilian wandering spider. Even more potent venom. Also causes painful. The professor paused, glancing at Miguel. Human males experience uncomfortable physiological reaction before death. He means it causes priapism, painful, prolonged erections before killing you, Miguel clarified, looking slightly embarrassed. Velix made another note in his database about the bizarre ways humans could die. While Professor Zix enthusiastically showed them more specimens, Drox sidled closer to the funnel web container. With practiced coordination from his forearms, he quickly swapped the specimen container with an empty one he'd hidden in his bag. Professor, Velix said loudly, creating a distraction, could you tell us more about the evolutionary advantages of venom production in island ecosystems? This launched Professor Zix into an excited lecture that gave Drox enough time to secure the stolen container in his bag. 20 minutes later, they made their excuses and hurried from the specimen room, container safely hidden. I can't believe we just stole one of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy, Velix whispered as they hurried down the corridor. Borrowed, Drox corrected with a grin. For science. For science. They barely made it to Drox's dormitory before disaster struck. While transferring the container to a more secure location, Drox's upper and lower right arms bumped into each other, causing him to fumble the container. It didn't break. The Academy used only the most durable materials for housing dangerous specimens, but the labeling system reset, removing the species identification markers. Which one is it? Velix asked in panic as they stared at 3 identical containers on Drox's desk. No problem, Miguel said, leaning closer to examine them. I can identify a funnel web by sight. But as he peered into each container, his expression grew increasingly confused. They all look like spiders, but in these containment fields it's hard to make out the specific features. We might have grabbed more than one specimen. The situation deteriorated further when Drox's dormitory alarm system suddenly blared, warning of an environmental breach. In their haste to silence it, someone later each would blame the others knocked all 3 containers to the floor. 2 remained sealed. 1 broke open. Please tell me that wasn't the funnel web, Velix said, his 3 eyes scanning the floor frantically. I can't confirm either way, Miguel admitted. Drox's orange scales had paled to a sickly yellow. Are you saying there's potentially a deadly earth spider loose in my dormitory? On the bright side, Miguel offered weakly. Now we have a perfectly natural way for it to encounter Thraxx when he arrives. Velix made another note in his database. Humans possess inappropriate sense of humor in life-threatening situations. 3 days of tense waiting followed. The spider, whichever species it was, remained elusive despite their best efforts to locate it. They had sealed Drox's dormitory and conducted multiple sweeps, but the creature seemed to have vanished. This is your fault, Drox hissed at Miguel as they gathered in the sealed room. Your planet's creatures are as recklessly destructive as your species. Says the guy who dropped the container, Miguel retorted. Velix, who had spent every spare moment researching Earth arachnids, intervened. According to my research, spiders are generally not aggressive unless threatened. It's probably found a quiet corner and built a web. Great, Drox muttered. So it's just waiting to ambush us. The good news, Miguel said, is that Thraxx arrives tomorrow. We can still conduct our experiment. Just in a more naturalistic setting than originally planned. As if summoned by his name, the door chime announced a visitor. Drox checked the security display and let out a groan. It's Thraxx, he's early. The door slid open to reveal a Kryx'Narian even larger than Drox. Where Drox was merely imposing, Thraxx was terrifying, nearly 9 feet tall, with scales so dark orange they appeared almost red, and arms muscled enough to wrestle a small spacecraft. Cousin. Thraxx boomed, ducking to enter the room. I finished my duties early and thought I'd surprise you. After introductions were made, Thraxx settled onto a reinforced chair designed for Kryx'Narian physiology. So what's this challenge I've heard about? Something about facing an Earth creature. The 3 students exchanged nervous glances before Drox cleared his throat. Yes, well, we wanted to test if Earth's supposedly deadly wildlife could affect our superior Kryx'Narian biology. Thraxx laughed thunderously. An excellent challenge. I've faced the acid storms of Nexus Prime and the gravity crushers of Titan's moons. No Earth creature could possibly harm me. That's what we're trying to prove, Miguel said, though there's been a slight complication. As Miguel explained their predicament, Thraxx's expression shifted from amusement to confusion. Let me understand correctly, the warrior said slowly. You stole a potentially deadly specimen from your Academy's collection, lost it in this very room, and now want me to wait until it decides to bite me? When you put it that way, it does sound rather bad, Velix admitted. Surprisingly, Thraxx burst into laughter again. This is perfect. A true test of courage and resilience. I accept this challenge. He stood up, towering over them. Where do these creatures typically hide? They prefer dark, undisturbed corners, Miguel explained. They might build webs in secluded areas. Then I shall seek it out rather than waiting for it to find me, Thraxx declared. Before anyone could stop him, Thraxx began moving furniture and checking corners with a reckless enthusiasm that made Velix's skin secrete stress toxins at an alarming rate. Please be careful, Miguel cautioned. These spiders can be aggressive when disturbed. Aggression is met with aggression, Thraxx replied, flipping over Drox's sleep platform with ease. That is the Kryx'Narian way. The search continued for nearly an hour with no sign of the missing spider. Thrax's initial enthusiasm had begun to wane when suddenly he froze, staring at the ceiling corner above Drox's study area. "Is that it?" he asked, pointing to a small dark shape nestled in a hastily constructed web. Miguel squinted up at it. "I can't be sure from this distance, but it could be." "Then the challenge begins," Thraxx declared, pulling a nearby chair beneath the web. "Wait," Velix called out. "Perhaps we should use protective equipment." But Thraxx had already climbed onto the chair and was reaching toward the spider with one massive hand. "Come, tiny Earth warrior. Face the might of Arak." The shout of triumph turned into a cry of pain as the spider, disturbed from its hiding place, dropped directly onto Thrax's face. In his surprise, the warrior swatted at it, causing the spider to bite defensively before falling to the floor and scurrying under a cabinet. "It bit me," Thraxx exclaimed, more surprised than pained. He touched the spot on his cheek where two tiny puncture marks were visible against his orange scales. "Is that all your Earth predator can do?" For a tense moment, nothing happened. Thraxx laughed triumphantly, turning to Drox. "Cousin, I believe you've won your wager. I feel nothing but the slightest tingling." His words cut off abruptly as the warrior suddenly staggered, his forearms flailing for balance. What is happening?" Thraxx collapsed onto the floor with a crash that surely violated the Academy's noise regulations. His massive body began to convulse, orange scales flushing deep red, then purple as his respiratory system clearly struggled. "This isn't supposed to happen," Drox said in panic. "Nothing affects a Kryx'Narian warrior this quickly." Miguel was already at Thrax's side, checking his vital signs with surprising competence. "His nervous system is going haywire. We need to get him to the medical bay immediately." Velix, overcome with guilt and scientific curiosity in equal measure, activated the emergency medical alert on his wrist device. "The medical emergency in Dormitory Block C, Room 471. Possible xenotoxic reaction. Subject is Kryx'Narian." As they waited for medical assistance, Thrax's condition deteriorated rapidly. His scales were now cycling through colors at an alarming rate, and a frothy substance leaked from his mouth. "I don't understand," Drox said, kneeling beside his cousin. "Our physiology should be resistant to most toxins." Miguel shook his head grimly. "Earth toxins evolve separately from the rest of the galaxy. Your natural defenses have never encountered anything like them." Velix made his final note in his research database before the medical team arrived. Earth remains classified as a death world for very good reasons. The Academy's medical facility was state-of-the-art, equipped to handle emergencies for hundreds of different species. "Doctor." "Oh." Nelvara, a gelatinous being whose transparent body contained multiple specialized organs for medical procedures, hovered over Thrax's bed while consulting holographic displays of his vital signs. "Fascinating case," Dr. Nelvara bubbled, voice emanating from a specialized vocal sac. "Never seen toxin affect Kryx'Narian physiology so severely. Fortunate you brought him in quickly." Velix, Miguel, and Drox watched anxiously from behind an observation shield. Thraxx had been stabilized but remained unconscious, his scales now a uniform pale yellow. "Will he recover?" Drox asked, his usual bravado entirely absent. "Oh yes," Dr. Nelvara assured them. "Synthesized counteragent already working. No permanent damage detected. Should regain consciousness within hours." Miguel let out a relieved sigh. "Thank goodness. I was worried we'd caused an interplanetary incident." "You still might," came a stern voice from behind them. They turned to find Academy Director Foros, a dignified avian being with silver plumage and a notoriously low tolerance for student shenanigans. Behind her stood Professor Zex, looking equally displeased despite his limited facial expressions. "Unauthorized removal of dangerous specimens," Director Foros began, reading from a data tablet. "Improper handling of Class 3 biological hazards. Conducting unapproved experiments on visiting dignitaries. Failure to report a containment breach." She looked up, eyes narrowing. "Have I missed anything?" Technically, Velix offered weekly. It was a comparative toxicology study. Without proper protocols or supervision, Professor Thraxx added, all 6 arms gesticulating in agitation. Dangerous approach. Reckless methodology. Poor scientific practice. Director Foros fixed each of them with a penetrating stare. Explain yourselves. Quickly. What followed was a jumbled account from all 3, each trying to minimize their own role, while accidentally implicating the others. The director listened silently, her expression unreadable. When they finished, she simply asked, and what did we learn from this unauthorized experiment? Miguel stepped forward. That Earth's evolutionary isolation has produced toxins unlike anything else in the galaxy? That assumptions about biological immunity can be dangerously wrong? That even the smallest creatures can be deadly if underestimated, Drox added quietly, looking at his unconscious cousin. Velix found his voice. That scientific curiosity must always be balanced with ethical considerations and proper safety protocols. Director Foros nodded slowly. All valuable lessons, ones that typically don't require endangering lives to learn. She consulted her tablet again. You will each submit a comprehensive research paper on proper xenobiological safety protocols. You will assist Professor Thraxx in reorganizing the specimen storage facility for the remainder of the term. And you will personally apologize to Warrior Thraxx once he recovers. The punishment was lighter than expected, but the director wasn't finished. Additionally, Mr. T. Since this appears to have been primarily motivated by your research interests, you will give a presentation to the entire xenobiology department on the dangers of Earth's wildlife and why proper containment procedures are essential. Velix's membrane lids fluttered nervously, but he nodded in acceptance. After the director and professor left, the 3 students remained at the observation window, watching Thrax's vital signs gradually strengthen. I still can't believe it, Drox said quietly. Our strongest warriors vulnerable to a creature that small. Miguel shrugged. That's Earth for you. Size isn't everything. Is that why humans are so? Velix searched for the right word, nonchalant about danger. Because you've evolved alongside such lethal creatures? Partly, Miguel replied. But it's more that we've learned to respect the danger without letting it paralyze us with fear. Australia has some of the deadliest creatures on Earth. But Australians don't spend their lives in panic rooms. They just check their shoes before putting them on and know which areas to avoid during certain seasons. The next day, a fully recovered Thraxx met with them in the Academy's garden dome. To their surprise, rather than being angry, the warrior seemed almost reverent. I owe you an apology, he told Miguel. I dismissed your world as soft and unthreatening because humans lack physical strength. I was wrong. No harm done, Miguel replied. Well, besides the near-death experience. Thraxx laughed, his color now back to a healthy deep orange. A warrior learns more from defeat than victory. I have newfound respect for humans who survive among such deadly creatures. The spider has been safely recaptured, by the way, Velix informed them. Professor Thraxx confirmed it was indeed a Sydney funnel web. Apparently the venom affected Thrax's ion channels even more severely than it does in mammals. The professor is quite excited about the research possibilities. Under proper supervision, of course, Drox added quickly. In the weeks that followed, the incident became something of a legend at the Academy. The arachnid incident, as it came to be known, led to significant revisions in the Academy's safety protocols regarding Earth specimens. All Earth fauna was reclassified with higher danger ratings, and handling procedures were substantially tightened. For his presentation, Velix created a comprehensive database of Earth's most dangerous creatures, organized by size, lethality, and defense mechanisms. To his surprise, the work earned him significant academic recognition, including an invitation to join Professor Thrax's research team. Drox, humbled by the experience, dedicated himself to studying biochemical defense systems across species. His thesis on comparative toxin resistance became required reading for all xenobiology students. And Miguel, He became something of a celebrity among non-Earth students, frequently asked to share stories about growing up on a death world. Most assumed he was exaggerating when he explained that the funnel web spider wasn't even in the top 10 most dangerous creatures Australians dealt with on a daily basis. Every year thereafter, new students at the academy received a special orientation briefing about Earth specimens, featuring a holographic recreation of the infamous spider incident. The message was clear. In the vast cosmos of biological diversity, assumptions about strength and danger, based on size or appearance, could be fatally flawed. As for the spider itself, it lived out its days in a specially reinforced containment unit with a warning label that became famous throughout the academy: caution, contents deadlier than they appear, even to Kryx'Narians.